Howdy again everyone, and after a long absence it's time for another weird lens review, and this one looks good enough to eat. Here we have the 32mm f10 Oreo lens, and I'm making a big air quote motion while I say the word Oreo there because, while it's 100% clear what look this thing's Imagineers were gunning for, it's not officially anything to do with the Oreo cookie company at all. In fact, if you type Oreo lens into Amazon, you'll basically just find a bunch of Oreo cookies and paraphernalia, so I'll put a link in the description below where you can get it for £30. Since purchasing one though, I've also seen them on sale on eBay for as little as £15 or about $20, so do take a look for them over on eBay. It's a totally manual lens with no controls or electronics at all, so it's fixed focus and fixed aperture, and so far I've found it available on Sony E, Canon RF, Fuji X, Micro Four Thirds, and Canon EOS M mirrorless camera mounts. It appears to be made by a company called Keks, K-E-K-S, and apparently they're made out of recycled disposable plastic cameras, which is a romantic little idea if that is indeed the case. It's a full frame lens, but only just. As you can see from these images, we're getting some very heavy vignetting in its image corners on full frame, so this thing really is just intended as a bit of fun. As I mentioned, the lens has precisely zero controls. It's just an inanimate hunk of plastic, and I include the optics within that, which are probably made of see-through plastic as well. Its aperture of f10 makes this a dark camera lens to use, although admittedly I've seen even darker than that on novelty lenses such as this. You'll need to use very high ISO levels on your camera if you're shooting indoors, of course. And the focus range goes from about 1.5 meters to infinity, so you can absolutely forget about any kind of close-up photography here. But I have to admit, having a lens like this on your camera is strangely liberating. Just point and shoot, there's nothing to it, and if your camera has in-body image stabilization, then that will help as well. Also, 32mm is a usefully wide angle for all manner of photography. The lens doesn't come with a front lens cap or filter thread. Well, when was the last time you saw an Oreo cookie with a filter thread anyway? When it comes to image quality, it's a disaster zone as expected, with every image quality problem in the book that you could possibly imagine. A little detail can be found in the middle of your images, but that's mostly washed over by terrible ghosting and very low contrast, combined with strong color fringing. Corner image quality melts away into deconstructed abstract nothingness of darkness, except for some exceptionally strong color fringing on what you do see. On an aps-c camera, the corners won't look quite so bad, but central sharpness will look even worse. Here you can see that, on full frame, the lens's vignetting and clear pincushion distortion are totally out of control. For anyone interested, here's the situation on aps-c, looking better, but you'll still have all that softness to deal with. Here's the lens's rather horrifying reaction to bright light intruding into the frame. And here you can see that the lens doesn't offer any kind of sun stars. Well, that's to be expected I suppose, without a proper aperture mechanism in there. The lens doesn't offer any kind of out-of-focus backgrounds for us to look at or close-up image quality, so that's about all the testing I can do today. If you can get one of these for 15 quid, then it's admittedly a little bit of fun. Well, for a few minutes anyway. I'd much rather have this than one of those pinhole lenses out there on the market. f10 is at least somewhat of a usable aperture at a pinch. Perhaps this would make a good lens for any video makers trying to capture a vintage look. You could turn your footage black and white and it'll look like old 16mm film. That's the extent of its potential usefulness that I can think of though. Everything else here is strictly for novelty value.